We have a massive update in regards to Scottie Barnes' potential availability in a Kevin Durant trade. And it's important to be brought up because I'm seeing everyone that isn't amongst Raptors fandom saying that he would be a prerequisite in a Kevin Durant trade. Even some Raptors fans are saying it. So I think it needs to be addressed. Every single report that indicates the Raptors' stance in this area. Additionally, we see the Indiana Pacers potentially cooking up a plan that might foil the Phoenix Suns' chances at acquiring Kevin Durant. And obviously the Suns are our main competitor to acquire this generational superstar, so that's important to dive into. And this might be reflected in the betting odds, as the Phoenix Suns took a little bit of a nosedive today. So lots of stuff to break down on the Kevin Durant front, and I'm going to end off this video with a fun little trade. Bleacher report throughout that I'm seeing a lot of people split on, so without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors side, just breaking down the latest Toronto Raptors news. And as everyone knows, we're on that quest. We're on that quest to acquire Kevin Durant. We got Indiana Jones, Masai Ujiri out here hunting, trying to make those deals, not including Scottie Barnes in a trade. And if you want to join the Raptors side just as we follow this quest, definitely subscribe to the channel for the latest Kevin Durant free agency, Toronto Raptors news. We cover it all here on the channel, so helps us out big time. Like the video, all that cool stuff. But we got to dive into some of this news because it's been wild, as you guys know, over the past week, and the news continues to come out. Now, the first one is, I feel like, just the most important to get out there because this has been the most important development over the past week or two since Kevin Durant made that trade request, is Scottie Barnes available in a trade package, right? Will the Raptors potentially let go of their Rookie of the Year future star? And I've held the firm that I don't want the Toronto Raptors to make one of these trades. I wouldn't give him up even for Kevin Durant, who I know is a superstar. I know would open our championship window wide open for the next 2-3 seasons, but the potential of the homegrown Scottie Barnes with the attitude he has towards the city, the room for growth, the athleticism, the defense, the way he perfectly fits, you know, the mold of a Toronto Raptors player, right? If Masai Ujiri could sort of mold a player perfectly, it would be Scottie Barnes to grow and develop, right? I don't want to give him up whatsoever. However, I'm seeing a lot of, as I said in the intro, a lot of Raptors fans and a lot of people, well, pretty well everyone outside the media are still continuing on the stance that Scottie Barnes would be a prerequisite in the trade. It's only really been Woj and Bobby Marks I've seen in the mainstream media just completely write him out of any of these deals. But I'm seeing guys like Zach Lowe say he would be shocked if Masai Ujiri could pull it off. Guys on like First Things First, who I know Chris Broussard, Nick Wright, they're getting a lot of flack for their takes on the Toronto Raptors recently, but they're saying Scottie would have to be in one of these deals. Even No Dunks, J.E. Skeets came on a podcast last year. I love their channel. I love their podcast since I was a little kid, right? Quality content, but they're out here saying Scottie Barnes would have to be in one of these deals too. So I don't know why everyone thinks he has to be a part of the package. We have a lot of assets that we've been covering on this channel. But with all that being said, reports continue to come out. They continue to indicate that the Toronto Raptors are not willing to add Scottie Barnes to add in any package or any other type of transaction. This is coming from Bleacher Report. Jake Fisher, I know he gets roasted and all that sort of stuff, but he's saying that there are multiple sources. And I think obviously, the Toronto Raptors don't leak anything. They don't have any insiders. They don't have any, they don't let people know what they're doing. But they usually let it be known what players are completely off the table. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is something Masai Ujiri wanted to get out there, wanted to just let everybody know. Because Scottie Barnes is not going to be dealt. He is too valuable to this Toronto Raptors franchise. He's valuable to our timeline, and yes, I get the championship window. I get why some people, right, I see the rationale in terms of why some people would be willing to let him go for a KD trade, but you're sacrificing just a golden piece, a perfect asset, right, that could potentially develop as a homegrown superstar in your organization. You don't give that up for essentially anything, right? Unless it's an MVP caliber player that's before his prime, even if he's a little bit older, right? Those are the only players you consider trading for Scottie Barnes, not someone that's 34 years old, that's had an injury history, no matter how good they are, right? Scottie Barnes is that elite of a talent. And I feel like he's just being underrated by people that haven't watched the Toronto Raptors, or they expect him to maintain his 15 points per game average that he had in his rookie year, right? People take massive steps in their first 2-3 years, and I think it would be foolish for us to give up on Scottie Barnes, even for as a remarkable of a player as Kevin Durant is. So that's a take there. And Scottie Barnes is on a rookie contract. You have to match that up with the $30-40 million that Kevin Durant is going to be making. So we're going to have to add, additional assets like likely an OG Anunoby, and then obviously Kem Birch. I know a lot of people have sort of written off in terms of value, but Scottie Barnes plus a key role player onto this team. Nah, get out of here with that madness. Scottie Barnes is not going to be traded. Michael Grange came out with it the weekend, and then it's been furthered up by these Bleacher Report posts. Bobby Marks also went on ESPN, essentially said that I'm always mixing up because Bobby Marks was the new ESPN analyst, former GM of the Brooklyn Nets, but Sean Marks is the new GM of Brooklyn, who obviously holds Kevin Durant right now, but came out and said Scottie Barnes unlikely to be dealt, not going to be available in any of these trades. So, folks, you see any fake news, some scoop Bs, as we broke or just trashed on last night, all the fake news that's going around surrounding Scottie Barnes. Don't believe it. We're not giving him up. I refuse to believe it because it's all fake. It's all trash. We don't have to give him up. And the reason, if there was a potential prerequisite, if there was a necessity the Raptors had to add Scottie Barnes to a Kevin Durant trade, you know what? We'd be out of the sweepstakes right now. The Raptors have other assets they can give up in a potential trade. Scottie Barnes is not going to be there. We'll start the video off with that rant. But the next thing we're talking about, the next thing we're diving into is the Indiana Pacers potentially ruining the Phoenix Suns trade package. Obviously, the Phoenix Suns are the other team that's sort of making their desperate put. Well, we're not that desperate. We're cool if we don't end up acquiring Kevin Durant, but they are a desperate roster right now in terms of bringing in something to potentially make a final championship run with Chris Paul. He's 37 years old. Obviously, Devin Booker's young, but they have their other young star in DeAndre Ayton, who's, by all accounts, going to leave the franchise this year, right? He's a restricted free agent. They don't want to bring him back on that contract. And then it seems like his relationship with ownership, his relationship with head coach Monty Williams has soured to the point where he just doesn't want to play in a Phoenix Suns uniform ever again. And after that horrific Game 7 loss to the Mavericks, they're just a sort of an organization that's in shambles right now, and they don't have, James Jones has done a remarkable job at constructing a roster, so don't get me wrong on that front, but their ownership is just pure garbage, and that's why they've struggled for a very long time until they, drafted all these top picks, Devin Booker developed and all that sort of stuff, but, it's a tough sort of organization. They're desperate for Kevin Durant. However, they're putting all the chips on the table, and one of the centerpiece assets that they want to, send in a package to Brooklyn or in a 3-team deal is DeAndre Ayton. Now, this is where the Indiana Pacers come in. This is where they come into play. Now, I reported yesterday the Raptors are one of 2 teams that are interested in acquiring DeAndre Ayton. However, that other team is the Indiana Pacers. And a couple weeks ago, the Indiana Pacers, a few days ago, the days feels like so much has happened over the past few days, but they traded Malcolm Brogdon to the Boston Celtics for a first-round pick and a lot of baby salary filler, right? Not big contracts or anything like that. So what did that do? What did that do for the Indiana Pacers? I sound like Brian Windhorst right now, and this is this is all coming out from Brian Windhorst. I'll get his image out there. He opened up the cap space for Indiana to they can outright sign DeAndre Ayton, and this is the big sort of summary for the update. And as you said, Indy will have the cap space to go after Ayton after the Malcolm Brogdon trade, and they intend on giving him an offer sheet. They intend on bringing him that deal. Now, I saw a bunch of people talking about how today was the day that he'd likely sign an offer sheet potentially with the Indiana Pacers. That is not the case. That Boston deal doesn't officially go through till July 9th, so they don't have the cap space to offer him the full restricted free agent or the full contract that they want to offer him, the signing sheet or whatever, until that deal officially goes down. So they have to wait until that point. I'll get Wendy's summary of everything that he broke down here still on the screen. But they potentially could do a sign and trade with the Phoenix Suns in terms of Miles Turner going back, and there's a good chance Turner won't be available, and we'll talk about Turner later in this podcast too with a Bleacher Report trade. But if Ayton wants to go and he makes that, and he signs with the Pacers in restricted free agency, they really don't have an asset, that key central asset to send back to the Brooklyn Nets, right? The longer this sort of plays out, the more desperate Brooklyn's going to become because they're losing, one of their two main competitors or two teams interested in acquiring KD, and the Suns could just straight up lose Ayton for either nothing or for a sign and trade with the Indiana Pacers for Miles Turner. And Miles Turner, I know people love to trash on Ayton given his poor, he didn't even have a horrible playoffs this year, but given that poor final game where he only played 17 minutes in game 7 against the Mavericks, but Ayton's a substantially more attractive asset out there on the open market than a Miles Turner. It's just what it is. He's a younger player. I know he'll have a bigger contract, but Miles Turner's contract is coming up I think after next season as well, and he's going to want the big bucks additionally. So, DeAndre Ayton, they're going to have to let him go. If the Phoenix Suns lose him to the Indiana Pacers or even the Toronto, we'd lose out on the Kevin Durant sweepstakes if we had to do a sign and trade. I'm not counting us, but if they lose out to the Indiana Pacers and he signs that offer sheet with Indiana, I'd be hard pressed to see any world where they acquire Kevin Durant. So that's the Pacers' little scheme that they got going on there now. But this might be reflected also additionally in the Suns' odds for landing Kevin Durant because they have plummeted. They have gone down in the dumps. Not really. They're still the favorites to acquire Durant, but they were the substantial favorite by all the bookies, by all the odds recently. But that has taken a major shift today. The Toronto Raptors remain pretty well the same, but we've seen the Suns go from minus 150 to plus 150. So if you're not familiar with the odds, that is a substantial decrease, right? That is a big drop for the Phoenix Suns there in terms of probability. The Nets have overtaken us as a potential destination, and we have sort of remained flat around that 250. What is it? I think we're at 300 now. I gotta repeat this graphic, this animation. Right, we're at plus 350. So our odds have dropped as well. It's likely due to the fact the Nets have come out and said, we could run back into the season with KD in the squad. However, I'm skeptical that the Nets would end up keeping Kevin Durant and running it back next season, just given the fact not only Kevin Durant doesn't want to play there, right? I see a lot of people talk about how Kevin Durant loves basketball. He'd never sit out and all that sort of stuff. However, things are a little bit sketchy on that front. I feel like Kevin Durant has enough influence to force his way out. We see his brother on Instagram going at Skip Bayless for saying that the Nets should just keep him and saying, nah, it's not going to happen. No way. Right? That's I don't see a world where Kevin Durant is cool with it. Even Shams came out and said that there's a possibility of it, but it'd be an extremely toxic environment. But the bigger reason is that Nets ownership, Joe Tsai, just does not want him there. He's been out here liking tweets about Kevin Durant slander on Twitter, right? He's just done with the whole situation, right? They paid the guy to essentially rehab for a year. They've gotten KD, forced the Nets to bring in Kyrie Irving. He's done with all the drama. He's done with all the nonsense. The owner of the Brooklyn Nets. I think there's a mutual just disgust with each side on that split that's happened there in Brooklyn. I don't see a world where Kevin Durant comes back to the Brooklyn Nets. So that's the update there on that front. But even though their odds have jumped, but even if we don't, I think the longer it draws out, the more desperate Brooklyn will become. Because we're not a desperate team. We are completely content going back into next season. We're not like the Phoenix Suns. We are content going back into next season with our current roster. But the Nets, things might get shaky. And maybe it becomes a trade deadline deal where we give up much less for KD when things get a lot more messy. But the final topic I want to discuss is just react to a little Bleacher Report trade. And just give my opinion, because I'm seeing a bunch of people split on this trade that was thrown up by Bleacher Report in one of their more recent articles. Always got to react to a Bleacher Report trade. But they're saying the Toronto Raptors, if we don't get Durant, don't get Ayton, could receive Miles Turner. And then the Indiana Pacers receive Precious Achiuwa, Kem Birch, Malachi Flynn, Svi Mykhailiuk, and a 2023 first-round pick. Now, this isn't as egregious as some of the stuff we saw, especially last season, with OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam getting thrown into deals for absolute garbage back, right? So I won't flame Bleacher Report that much for this one, because I get the Precious, market value probably hasn't grown to the point where it should specifically be. However, I'm still giving it what they call a little golden, because I switched up the golden kazoo animation. It's not going to pop up, but a golden kazoo is going to be given out to to whoever did this deal, because there's no way I'm giving up the precious propaganda for Miles Turner, just straight up. No way. Precious on a younger contract. He fits our timeline better. Look at what he did in the playoffs in flashes against Joel Embiid this year in the second round. Like, why would we give up on such a young prospect that fits our development system perfectly, that fits the Scottie Barnes, OG Anunoby, Gary Trent Jr. timeline for an older guy that we're going to have to pay big money in free agency in a couple years? Doesn't make sense. Makes zero sense. And the fact that we're the team adding a pick to that, get out of here with that nonsense. I know Miles Turner has value. I know he's taller than Precious Achiuwa, but foolishness, utter foolishness on that front. So that's my reaction to that trade there. But let me know what you guys think of all the news that's been breaking down. Subscribe to the Raptors Side if you haven't already. Like the video. Check out the Instagram, the TikTok, the Twitter, all that cool stuff. Anyways, enough of me rambling. I'm signing off. Cheers.